Hey there, lovely people, and welcome to the Gamer's Rest. My name is Tal, and in this show, Tal Talks, I get a chance to talk with talented individuals involved in the TTRPG stream. And today's guest is incredibly busy, a TTRPG streamer, writer, creator, GM for hire, and founder of the Exquisite Corpse Presents, a home for unusual stories. It's Abadonne Killbride the Fourth. Hello, how are you?
Hello. Thank you so much for having me. I am incredibly excited to be here.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely my pleasure. So I really can't wait to chat with you today about all the different things you've got going on. But for those people that haven't met you as of yet, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and where people can find you?
Sure, absolutely. I am mostly on Twitch on my channel Exquisite Corpse Presents. That's where I stream about 90% of the time, but I am also on Twitter and YouTube, and I do occasionally post to those. I'm at Atrocity Kitsch on Twitter and on Instagram. Also, the Exquisite Corpse. I'm a lot of places under a couple of different aliases, but I'm pretty hard to miss, so I'm sure once you find the right screen name, you'll know it's me. TTRPGs are pretty much my life right now.
Yeah, because we've been kind of chatting backwards and forwards, and it does seem like your life's really hectic at the moment.
It was very, very quiet to begin with, and then we started getting ready for our fall season, and now everything is sort of happening on top of itself as usual.
So I'm always curious, how did you get started in the actual industry itself? What was your kind of starting point?
I started in the community on a whim, actually. Somebody reached out to me through Facebook and told me that there was someone who was looking for an all-black TTRPG cast for a new show. And having never played any kind of tabletop before, I immediately applied and was surprisingly accepted. Blackness and Dragons over on Althaven was my first TTRPG, and is still very, very close to my heart. We actually just went to celebrate one of the players' weddings this weekend.
Oh, that's amazing. So you literally your first experience was just jumping straight into a chef. Wow.
I am a firm believer in doing the scary thing first and then being scared, because otherwise I, a very anxious person, would never get anything done. So I'm very big on leaping and then trying to build my wings on the way down, and it works about 50% of the time.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. That's so good. So how was that as for as an experience for you, that kind of jumping in, and I'm guessing some of the people involved would have been experienced and done that kind of thing before?
It was very scary.
Yeah.
It was easily one of the scariest things I've ever done personally. I went to art school and was so shy that I worked as a stage tech so that nobody would see me.
Oh.
So the idea that now I do this on a regular basis and I'm in front of a camera and in front of people is still very strange to me. But the more experienced people in that group in particular were very, very good about kind of taking it easy on those of us who weren't as familiar. There wasn't a lot of rules lawyering, so it was a very easy game to break into. And then we were on a break before our finale of our first season, and I discovered Dimension 20, and I blasted through an entire season and came back and said, I know how to play D&D now. And the rest is kind of history.
That's always great when you kind of find something like that and it's like, oh, that makes sense now as to, where things should be. Yeah, I love that. That's so very cool. Did you enjoy it, or did you find it scary or worried, or?
Both. I definitely enjoyed it, but I do distinctly recall after every show, which my mother and sister watched that first season to support me, I would go immediately text my sister and go, did I do okay? Was I funny? Was I interesting? And I have lost a little bit of that habit, at least when I'm streaming as a guest. But there was a solid year where my family was very good about reassuring me that I was doing just fine streaming.
That's so cool. I love that. It's I do sometimes think that, having met a few people, whilst we all come across as, we're into the character, enjoying it, there is a huge nervous energy just sat behind it, which just goes, was it good? Did you enjoy it? Yeah.
Very much so.
I'd love to talk to you about your kind of writing design experience. You're a contributor on the Anansi Tapestry of Lives. How did that come about for you, and what was it like writing for quite a big professional project?
It was really lovely, actually. I received an email. My email's listed on my Twitter so that things like this can happen. And someone emailed me and asked me if I might like to contribute. And I ended up speaking with them over the course of that week. And I believe what I wrote was an NPC named Huckleberry, who is somewhere in there. He's a farrier. He works with horses. But it was a really cool back and forth process between myself and the creators of Anansi's of writing out something and sending it over and them going, okay, that's great, but we're missing this, or can you add in this to fit this format? So it was really interesting learning how other people organize their information. As a DM, that's a big thing for me, is figuring out how to organize information and then reparcel it so it's digestible. And working with Anansi's was a huge help in just understanding the structure of setting up an adventure or of presenting it to other players.
So was that your first kind of professional piece, doing that, or had you done?
Yes.
That was your first one. You really do just jump into it, don't you? I love that. That's so good. What's your when you are doing that kind of writing and design process? What's how do you get started? Where do you begin those kind of creative processes?
I will usually start with Pinterest, just getting kind of an idea of imagery and what different locations and things look like. So I know how I'm going to describe them to other people, even if I don't, send them the Pinterest board. I have a strict visual that I'm keeping in mind and kind of building the adventure or the encounter around. I will usually just start with one core idea and build out as far as I possibly can from it and see if it turns into something that can be played, or if I've just spent a month of my life like reorganizing my notes for no reason, which has happened before. But it's really been a question of figuring out the easiest way to create a whole world for people, but still make it something that they can interact with, still make it something that they can poke and prod and press with. And Anansi's was really good for getting a sense of, okay, when you enter into a professional game or when you enter into a game that someone else is DMing, one, these are the descriptions they're reading. This is, for our purposes, the source book that they're using, and you get to hear how it sounds read aloud and how it interacts with characters, but also seeing the way that they hide information about things in source books, the way that they'll tell you, okay, this information is for you specifically to use in your role play, don't tell the characters anything, has been immensely helpful for me because I want to tell the players everything right away. I want them to know everything about the story and have as much fun as possible. So learning to create suspense and levels of information is something I definitely got from working with Anansi's.
Because this is the problem, you can get really excited about having created this amazing piece and it's like, oh, I've got no one to tell. Oh, that's really frustrating. Yeah, definitely. So do you think that it when you do start, is that kind of Pinterest, is that your inspiration, would you say, as to where you draw ideas from, or do you already have something in your head and look for that on Pinterest? Which kind of way does that go for you?
Column A, a little of column B. I usually have like a vibe that I have in mind, but a vibe is not really a game. So if I know sort of the gist of what it is that I want to build, I'll go into Pinterest and kind of play around with the algorithm and just type in a bunch of random words and until I start getting what feels correct. A lot of the time, until I actually get in there and get my hands on whatever project I'm working on and start tearing things apart and seeing what works and seeing what doesn't, I don't really get very far. I kind of have to go through the process from start to finish of, here's the idea, what images can I use to build up this idea in my own head, and then how can I retranslate those back out to the world. So it's more like a touchstone for me. When I start to kind of lose track of what's going on in the world, or the players have poked something and it shifted everything, I can kind of go back to those boards and go, okay, here's the original idea, what can I do with it now that these changes have been applied?
So are you quite a visual person in that respect when you're designing?
Yes.
It kind of, yeah.
I didn't think that I was until I started doing this, but visuals are very, very important for me, and very important for me to be able to. My goal is to take the image in my head and put it in your head as much as humanly possible.
Have you, when you have done these kind of things, you said before that sometimes you can spend time on a whole project and it just doesn't kind of go anywhere. How do you kind of deal with that? Because having been there and done that, I know how frustrating that can be. How do you then kind of pull yourself back and go, okay, that's fine, these things happen, I need to then, reset myself?
I think I'm getting better at it over time. I think the work teaches you how to do it in terms of tabletops in the industry, and I think you have to have a few mistakes. I think you have to have a few things that don't turn out, or that go live but don't work out or don't finish, so that you know what to do the next time that happens. Which is not to say that I won't cry and stomp my foot and fall to the ground crying and cursing God when something doesn't work out, but eventually get back up and sort of look at what you can salvage. So my rule of thumb now is I don't throw anything away. Even if a show doesn't work out, it was one of the best tips I got from or National Writing Month before they started using AI, is to consider everything that you make as parts. Can this be a table? If it can't be a table, can it be a table leg? If it can't be a table leg, can I use it as flooring? So just sort of keeping all of the different elements of things, even if they didn't work in that iteration, still having them close enough to reference and close enough to reconsider taking a swing at. Now they're just kind of my Everest. They're just kind of hanging up on the wall like, someday I'm going to get you, and it's going to happen. I'm working on a very big game right now that's sort of been on my dream game wall for about 3 years. So eventually it does happen.
It does happen. How many, okay, this is a personal question. How many projects do you ever have go on the go at once?
That's a great question.
Because I was looking at mine the other day, and I was thinking, I wonder if this is normal to have this many things just kind of going. Yeah, I could do all of these.
I think it is. I think once you sort of get into TTRPGs, you get used to that kind of multitasking, and you're just like, I need to have 50 things on the burners at once. I think for me, my schedule is not as busy as it has been previously, but it's still fairly tight. I run games on Start Playing as well as streaming games on my channel. So, for instance, this weekend I have 5 games. I have 1 Friday, 2 Saturday, and 2 Sunday, and that's every other weekend. Usually it's 4 games a weekend, but I'm starting a new game on Friday. Generally speaking, I'd say about 5 or 6 games a week that are like regular running, and that doesn't include the many hours of prep that I spend just sort of trapped in this office.
So that kind of nicely brings you on to Exquisite Corpse and the work you've been doing there. How did that come about, and can you tell us what you're currently working on?
Absolutely. Exquisite Corpse Presents actually came out of the ashes of a channel that nobody knows about because it did not get popular. Before my main project, Sister Cities, took off on Exquisite Corpse Presents, I started a different channel, a smaller channel that was centered around one show, just to kind of get a feel for how everything worked. And that project ended up tanking, and I don't think it ever saw the light of day. And I was very, very mad about that. So I decided I was going to start my own channel, and I was going to teach myself how to do everything so I could make sure things got out. And for the most part, that's true. Technology is still not my strong suit, but I know enough to get by and to run my own shows, and I'll take it. It's very much been a thing of like, I know that I really enjoy doing this, and I enjoy getting to see it on my players' faces when I'm doing it. And I just wanted more of that. I wanted to create a space for weird games and weird people, or people who are neurodivergent, or people who have chronic illness or disability, who just kind of fall through the cracks of popular content a lot of the time. And so we've built it up as this place for unusual people who have unusual ideas and want to share them with other people.
So cool.
And that's really been our touchstone from the very beginning. It's been let's make a home. Let's make a place where people can come, and even if they're not on 100% of the time, they're still welcome.
Yeah.
They still know that they're going to get picked for projects. And right now, I am working on two things. Friday at 6 p.m. PST is the premiere of Metalloteens and the City of Tomorrow, which is
Yes.
a Masks a New Generation actual play that I've been putting together for the last 2 months. And it's finally going to see the light of day, and I'm very, very
Great stuff.
excited. The players have created really cool characters, and really like bought the ticket and took the ride and sat down with a 40-page homebrew sourcebook and actually interfaced with it and took the time with it and really have rooted
Wow.
themselves into the world.
That's
So
great.
I'm very, very excited. The other one, which is much more ambitious and is taking a little bit longer, is called Dead Mountain Prophet. Excuse me. It's called The Forfeit, the Ruin, and the Reckoning, the Dead Mountain Trilogy. And it is basically going to be Lord of the Rings. I've been trying for as long as I've had Exquisite Corpse Presents to build a world that had enough runway that I could do something like Lord of the Rings and explore the ages of the world. And my Knights of the Round Table, King Arthur show on Sundays has been pretty helpful for that. So the conceit is that we will follow 5 or 6 people through 3 different ages of the world, all centering around the eruptions of a volcano in the Feywild. Every 3 to 6,000 years or so, we have magical Pompeii and things get very bad, and then we kind of have to recover from that. I'm very excited. It's a really ambitious thing to do, to try and cover 10,500 years over the course of 3 seasons. But with the people who have applied, I think we could do it. I think it's very, very possible. And even if it's not, I know that we'll have a great time trying.
Yeah, definitely. That does sound ambitious. There's no two ways about that. Is that so? Because obviously you talk about the cast and the fact that, as you rightly said, you're looking for people who don't normally get that chance in the mainstream stuff for whatever reason. Does that create more work in terms of all the background stuff, or is it somewhat easier because you're already expecting that you're going to come across, people not being able to do things because of personal issues or because it doesn't quite fit where they are?
It's generally not an issue as long as we my team and I know what's going on.
Yeah.
Generally I go into it expecting, okay, people have real lives. They have things going on beyond, the 4 lines of this computer screen. And it's reflected in our channel policy. Unlike a lot of streaming channels, people are allowed to get up and leave whenever they need. They're allowed to turn their cameras off whenever they need. If we're doing a particularly long scene with someone, I have no problem with someone turning off their own camera so they can just kind of move about the cabin freely until they hear their name. And it's just little things like that are very easy to add into a streaming routine or to a channel's policies that just kind of fall by the wayside a lot of the time in favor of content. So we do take long breaks. We do have periods where, nothing is streaming, but it's always based off of what is best for our very small team and also for whatever players we have in rotation at the moment. I wouldn't say that it's only more work when something comes up and we didn't know about it and then have to try and mitigate something or scramble to get somebody, on screen in time. Generally speaking, now we ask on our applications, is there any way that we can accommodate you? Is there anything that you need before we get started? So even before the acceptance letters have gone out, we have an idea of what we're working with and what people might need and can have those things in place before we reach out to them.
I do love that because I think sometimes people can get a bit lost in what they're trying to create rather than realizing, there are some amazing people out there who just need a little bit of consideration or some changes to how things work to still play a valuable role or part in things that you're doing. So kind of hope that what you've got there becomes the norm for any kind of TTRPG. I mean, I've been lucky. The people I play with have always been very considerate of my kind of individual needs. So I got really lucky, but I know loads of people that have kind of had to walk away from projects because the expectation is you've got to be there on time, you've got to adhere to these hard rules. It just doesn't work. It's not, human enough, as it were.
And I think the mistake a lot of people make, and myself included in the earlier years of the channel, is trying to run a streaming channel the way that you would a regular production house, a brick and mortar production house, and keeping with deadlines. And the thing that people have to remember is that everybody's a volunteer. Everybody is here of their own free time and own free volition, and finding a way to get things accomplished without belittling those people who are the only reason you have a table is, I think, very important.
Yeah,
I tend to err on the side of being a pushover rather than upsetting players who I know have other things going on in their lives. And that has, that's its own sort of set of problems. But for the most part, I do feel comfortable that people know if they come to my channel and have a problem, mid run of a show or are going to be very, very late for something, as long as we know, we're more than happy to accommodate. And it works out pretty smoothly. On our show on Friday, one of the main characters will be coming late every session because she's coming straight from work. But knowing that, we were able to just write it sort of canonically into the narrative that character is always just going to be kind of skidding into the screen whenever she gets home from work. So as long as we know that we can do fun things like that and make it part of the game rather than something that people are apologizing for or trying to work around.
Do you think that makes you more... trying to think of the right word, I guess more adaptable as a GM, that you've got this awareness of having to think quite quickly sometimes to be able to accommodate those kind of things? Do you think that's kind of changed how you DM any of your games that you do?
Oh, I think it really has. When I first started DMing, I went in with like a 10-page script of all of the things I wanted to make sure that they knew and that were important for them to run into, and learned very quickly that games don't go that way. You can't plan for every detail of a game, especially not with live players. So now when I am writing out a session and I'm trying to figure out what the players are going to do, I go back to their characters specifically. I go back to how they built them, what they built them to be able to do, and then I try to figure out a way for them to be able to do the cool thing they have in their brain. It doesn't always work out. There are some things that have to be vetoed, either because they'll break the game or because they don't quite fit into what we're doing. But it's always... the goal is to always be respectful and saying, hey, I don't know if this is going to work, but I do have some other ideas that will kind of fit with what you've already got in mind. And let's see if we can find kind of a happy middle ground. And again, trial and error. That's something that I've only learned from not having the right response previously. Now knowing how to go back in and go, okay, let's take another look at this without making someone feel like they've been attacked or I think their ideas are stupid or bad.
So there's definitely that sense of developing tact and kind of critical thinking, almost in terms of, okay, what's the best way to handle this? And I know that can be challenging sometimes, just because you're dealing with real people.
It's nice to have a team in that regard. It's only three of us. It's my roommate, my partner, and I sort of getting things done. But even still, when a problem does arise, it's nice to be able to go to these other two people and go, hey, can you check me? Can you tell me if my tone is like too harsh or if I'm overreacting? Can you just take a look at this and let me know if my response is the correct one or the proportional one?
A good kind of sound checking board for, just for you to go, okay, actually, that's perfectly acceptable the way I'm kind of thinking,
Yeah, we definitely want to get stuff done, and we have a lot of exciting ideas and things that we want to make this year and a platform switch in mind, but it's still people first. We don't have a channel, we don't have games without the people who are volunteering, 3-4 hours of their time a week, sometimes multiple times a week. So making it as comfortable for them to be in those seats for that 3 hours as possible is really, really our goal and our litmus for whether or not people will return to play with us.
Yeah, absolutely. So not that long ago, we had the World of Darkness London After Midnight. How did that go, and how did you set up an event like that?
Uh, London After Midnight was phenomenal. There was a lot of confusion the week of Juneteenth with scheduling, so we actually didn't get the full program out, but everyone was gunning for making that game happen. We had technical issues the first night and couldn't stream the first part of a two-part game, but we did manage to get it all in the second night
Okay.
within like 4 hours. And it was cool and it was very strange. Obsidian Brews is a channel that I'm very familiar with. The person who runs it, Bendy Mitchell, and I have the same birthday.
Okay.
So it was no surprise having her there, and I kind of knew what I would get out of her and from one of my regular players. But the other half of the group was from Batty Bards, who I was not especially familiar with
Okay.
before now. We'd been chatting for a couple of months about involving them in Juneteenth stuff, but hadn't actually worked together before.
Yeah.
So kind of figuring out how to get me plus 6 other people to work together in the space of 4 hours with very little run-up time to get to know each other was definitely an interesting process. I have sort of little pins in my mind of things to not do next time and things to
Yes.
definitely do next time. But all in all, I think that they did have a really good time and they got to kind of explore the themes that they wanted to. We went very kind of uh sort of ancient African with a lot of uh, the aesthetics because it was taking place in London. So we got to kind of lightly explore colonialism without
Yes.
anyone having bad feelings at the end of it, which is always nice.
Yep.
In terms of setting up for it, London After Midnight is based off of the Fall of London sourcebook, which I've had for years and been dying to run, but it's such a particular game and has so much to do with like blood ensorceling people so that they serve you forever. You really have to have a group of people who trust you in
Yes.
order to run a game like that.
Yeah.
And I was very lucky that they allowed me to kind of lead them through being reawoken vampires and feeding on people and things like that. The hope is to do another installment of it at some point,
Oh,
maybe
amazing.
next year. They left sort of little cliffhangers for themselves so that it is possible for them to step back into the world. So I had most of the source book prep done. I knew sort of what direction I wanted to go, but once we got everybody into the Discord and started talking about um, how things were going to work and how these characters were going to relate to each other, I did go back in for about another week and just annotate heavily everything
Okay.
in the source book that I could find that pertains to those characters, and then reorganized it into one long document so I could have it open in a single tab.
Yeah.
I don't often play out of source books for that reason, because having to remember somebody else's details, there's a lot of pressure.
Yes.
Like, oh, if I don't remember this, I might ruin their whole adventure. So I don't often do it. But that is one that I think I would definitely love to run again. It's very rich in terms of history and in terms of the kinds of challenges that vampires are facing. As much as I love Vampire the Masquerade, you do get a lot of like blank by night games, and we really wanted to do something else. We really wanted to go, okay, we know vampires live in cities, but what else do they do? So it was a nice chance to kind of play around in that lore, other than either what I've done in my own mind or for my start playing games. It was nice to kind of play standard Vampire the Masquerade without it feeling like a standard game.
So what do you think you kind of learnt from that whole production? What did you walk away thinking, do you know what, actually the biggest lesson I've learnt?
The biggest lesson that I've learned is, I think, being able to say no or say that's not right. Coming from that position of these players are volunteers and I want them to be happy, I am very much a pushover, and that's how sometimes characters end up doing Mach 4 in one of my D&D games, and I can do nothing about it because it's all stuff that I gave them. That was a very interesting fight, someone suddenly going from 0 to 400 feet per round. I think the thing that I really learned was, one, sort of paring things down and learning how to condense 8 hours of game into 4 hours of game, but still hit all of the important notes. And really just after a certain point, you do have to be a hard ass about scheduling and turning things in, and that's the part where I usually falter. So I think the big thing for me is just being very clear about deadlines on the things that I do need back, like character sheets or any important backstory, just so I have time to sit with them and give them the full attention that they deserve. And I'm not like ripping something off the top of my desk 5 minutes before a game to make a note on a Post-it note about something I want to do for their character.
Absolutely. I mean, I think sometimes it's easy to forget that you've got a responsibility and there's stuff that you've got to do, and how people interact and what they do does have a massive impact on that. And sometimes just going, no, you don't understand, this is important, I need this. It doesn't always come easy when you want people to have a good time.
So it's been an exercise in tone.
Yes,
really. It's been an exercise in how do I say what I need to say without sounding like the worst person in the
world. That's a real skill though. Because actually, most people would just not worry about that. But I think if you're a creative person, you instantly, it's like, oh, I don't want to upset them. How do I say it so it doesn't upset them? Just cringing on the inside when you're just asking a question.
Very much so. Occasionally I'll wait like a full day to be like, do I really need to ask this? Do I really? Okay. No, this is important. I do still need to do this.
Yeah. I'm glad it's not just me. So I'd also love to know about being a GM for hire. Because it's something that gets talked about a lot on the social medias and so on and so forth, but I've never actually chatted to someone who's physically done it. How do you get into it, and what's your experience been like with it?
The biggest leap was believing that people would pay me for a session. Live streaming, of course, they're all volunteers, and it's a very big difference to then go, hey, pay me for the privilege of being in this game. So that was a really big hurdle for me to jump over, even after several years of DMing. And it was only after talking to some of my regular players that I was actually brave enough to make the account. And then I let it sit for like 4 months and didn't do anything with it because I was scared. But I started to have ideas for new games and things that I really wanted to run that either wouldn't fit in my channel's programming or we just didn't have a big enough team to support it. So I started with a game called A Time of Tales, which is a homebrew D&D game that takes place inside of a storybook. So all of the characters are either playing famous people from story or relatives of famous people from story. We are currently at the home of the DeVilles. One of our players is a son of House DeVille. So I started with that, and it was very much the same thing of like, here's a homebrew primer that's got all of the information you need and is not a D&D source book. Good luck. And it does sort of feel like just throwing like Les Mis at them and going, figure it out. So I am very glad when people ask me questions about things that they've seen in the primer or things that pertain to them. And I'll usually make like a little cheat sheet to send out for things that have more dense lore of just like, here's your part of the world. Just, this is all you got to worry about. And that went pretty well. That was my first game, and it shows in the scheduling. It's every 2 weeks. It's a very laid back kind of game, very much my first foray into it. But I do run a couple of other games now. One in particular is a custom game that someone asked me to run after playing a one-shot with me. I do a historical one-shot called A Night to Remember that is both sort of like almost like a BBC documentary about a historical event, but the players are all living through the historical event, and it's based with 10 candles, so usually everybody dies at the end. So we've done Pompeii, we've done Salem, and then I have a couple of others that are written out, like the Library of Alexandria. And they played through Salem with me, and miraculously everybody in their game lived, which has never happened in all the times that I've run that game. But when you're being hunted by witch hunters and you get everybody in jail to say the Lord's Prayer at the top of their lungs, I can't in good conscience go, and now you
No, absolutely,
So that was really cool too, getting to see how it differs from being streamed, getting to see like, oh, okay, this game can work completely differently than I ever imagined. And they asked me if I would run a game called Inevitable for them, which I am madly in love with.
Great game.
So much fun.
Absolutely brilliant game.
I did not think I'd like it as much as I do, but for DMing, it's wonderful because they give you everything that you need to create a story, but there are no real rules about how you do that.
Yep.
So with that group and my storybook group, I have at least 1 or 2 players who are not super familiar with D&D or have never been in their own campaign, and they've both kind of lent themselves to letting those players get to the level that everybody else is in terms of comfort.
That's
letting
good.
those players like understand where they fit in the world and how their mechanics work and how those might change has been really, really nice. I love first-time players. I think that they're often very nervous and often aren't sure how big their responses should be or when they should talk, but they usually have so much to offer to a game that people are just not patient enough to let them get to. So I think in professional DMing, I'm finding that there's a lot more time. There's a lot more just kind of leisure in terms of, okay, if we don't finish it this week, we'll get to it next week. That's fine.
Yeah.
As opposed to streaming where you're on a schedule, people have time commitments. And I think I just really enjoy the intimacy of professional DMing. I really enjoy, in particular, my Inevitable group. I was on vacation this week and didn't see them, and it felt very strange not to have 3 hours with them on Sunday and sort of get to go through their adventure. So I'm very excited to be back with them this week. And to be building a game for all of them that is specific to them. We're not just playing Inevitable. We are playing a version of Inevitable that is fully about their characters being the heroes, even though Doom is inevitable. I think the biggest thing about professional DMing is being prepared for failure in a way that you are not with streaming. It's failure that has like a monetary component, and that's very important to consider, especially if you're looking at moving fully to gig economy, moving fully to professional DMing, being aware of like how the taxes work on professional DMing sites like Start Playing and what's going to get taken out, and staying on top of the updates so that you are as informed as you can be for the players who are coming in. I don't know. I mean, it feels like professional DMing is a lot of work, and it is, I guess, in a literal sense, but when you get to the actual game and you get to see the results of the labor and see these players who paid to be here light up and be excited about the things that have been provided for them, you kind of forget about all of the other stuff. And I think my goal is really just as a professional DM, more so than the DM who streams, creating an experience that they can't get anywhere else, and that is worth coming back for. That is one of a kind, and that'll make them, run to their coworkers and go, "I have to tell you what I did
the weekend."
Games. Yep.
That's so cool. Yeah, I guess I've never really thought about it that way. That actually, these are it's a different thing to anything else in terms of you've got this group of people that want the experience, and actually you've got that chance to make something, like you said, very, I guess, kind of personal for them in terms of what they're looking for. I'm really interested. The groups that kind of came together, were they already established in terms of they were friends, or were they individuals kind of coming to a group for the first time and not really knowing each other?
A little bit of both. My storybook game is they're all strangers to me except for 1 or 2.
Okay.
One is someone who watches my channel regularly, and one is someone that I just know from like Facebook. But the person that I know from Facebook brought in one of their friends who brought in one of their friends. So half of that group kind of knows each other tangentially, and then the others all came in completely new and sort of learning how to figure each other out. The Inevitable group, they all knew each other already. They were actually all of my Inevitable group was in my Salem game, so they were the ones who just kind of transferred over,
across,
and that's been nice too. It's been really nice getting to kind of build that relationship and get to keep them and also do something new with them. Trying to think. In terms of Start Playing in particular, I think it's very easy to get discouraged, and I don't think people really talk about that. It's, yeah, I'm a professional DM, I have a start playing account, but no one talks about like the weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks of promotional work that you have to do to lock people in, to onboard players, to make players feel comfortable coming in if they're playing with a new group.
Yeah.
I've been lucky in that even the group that was kind of cobbled together plays very well together. They've kind of grown into each other over the course of several sessions.
Yeah.
And even the people who are a little quieter than others, or, you know, a little bit less likely to jump to make the first check, the group will kind of circle back and just kind of go, hey, do you want to take a crack at this? Do you need anything? So they're very good about like reaching back for those who have fallen behind, which is not, I get, not necessarily common in games.
No.
I find that there's a lot more patience in games on start playing than there is in streamed games, because there's no pressure of like an audience watching or of entertaining. Yeah. The only people you have to entertain are the ones who are at the table.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, because I guess there's there must be a genuine fear that people won't gel.
Yes, yeah. All the time. And you really won't know until either you get the group together for a session 0 or you have your first in-game conflict.
Yeah.
And hopefully you figure it out before that conflict happens, but a lot of the time you don't know that it's coming. No. And you kind of just have to react in a moment that allows in a way that allows the characters to have the conversation, but without the players becoming too emotionally invested in a conversation that they're having, so much so that they fight or there's static at the table. I usually will check in at the end of every game too and just go, hey, how are we feeling? I know, you know, XYZ happened and that was a little rough, or you had some bad rolls. I just want to check in and make sure, you know, we're still having fun. And even if they don't reach out to me in the group sort of cool down, usually if there is something, there's enough of a level of comfort that they'll message me and go, hey, I didn't get to do this, or I do want to get to do this, or I'd like to explore this. And that gives me time in between their games to figure out how to start implementing that into the game.
How do you deal with your own kind of, I guess, personal worries about going out there and doing it? Because I know you said you just jump in and you just go for it and learn to fly. How did you feel when you did that first kind of paid gig, as it were?
Surreal. Even though, you know, it's start playing, you're not charging through the nose. It's not like an Abria Iyengar $300 an hour kind of thing. But
wouldn't that be nice?
Wouldn't it be
that'd be
wonderful?
Amazing, yeah.
But the first time you see that kind of payment drop into your payouts bin, there is a moment of like, I really did it.
Amazing.
I'm a professional. It's $15 and I'm a professional DM. And that little boost is usually enough to get you to kind of push the next game.
Yeah.
And you just have to, I think, lean into those small successes, whether it's having repeat players, people who want to come back and spend more time with you in different universes, or having players who are maybe a little timid but still want to be a part of the action and, you know, are still actively trying to interrogate the world that they're in. There has to be an awareness, I guess, of not just the totality of the story, but separating player from character and being able to speak to both of them in the moment, I think. And I do feel like professional DMing has lent a little bit more to that, because again, there's no time constraint. We're not streaming to however many people, so we can have a little bit more of an earnest conversation about what's going on and how we change that. The first time I did it was still terrifying. It was still, I actually had my roommate sit in as one of the players because I was really worried that like the energy wouldn't be good, or they wouldn't really get the conceit of the game, or I wouldn't be able to make it fun for them. And it ended up being an absolute blast and they came back, but that worry's always in my mind of like, oh no, what if they don't like it? What if they don't like it? What if they don't come back? And so trying to find ways to mitigate that, I do guests for my start playing games as well.
Okay.
Usually friends of mine or people that I've worked with before who I can just sort of throw things at.
Yeah.
One of the upcoming guests on Metalloteens is actually one of the players from my Inevitable game, who has been quite lovely and has sat down with some lore and is getting ready to play a pretty spectacular villain for them.
Excellent.
Another one of my players has streamed on our Sunday show with us, and she played a Star who's a kindergarten teacher. So as much as I can, getting to find out what kind of characters people like to play, what their strengths are, what kind of games they want to be in, and then going, hey, do you want to just come hang out in this world for like a weekend? You know, it's not like a long-term commitment, but do you want to just come and like maybe strap on a superhero suit and just sort of get wild for a couple hours? And that's a really fun thing to get to do too, especially for people who are dungeon masters or who are on Start Playing, getting to go, do you just want to have some fun and not have to do anything? Do you want to just show up? Has been really cool.
And that kind of nicely brings me on to, I guess, almost at the end of our questions. But what tips can you give people about that engagement? How do you keep players kind of focused and interested? And is there a magical formula to making sure people go wow, or is it just a lot of hard work?
I don't know if it's magical, but I do definitely have a formula. I think the most important thing is to listen to what your players are saying, because what they're saying is almost as important as what they're not saying.
Yeah.
And you can't pick out what they're not saying if you're not paying any attention at all. Listening to narrations that they give in character, or reading backstory that they send you in full, and actually taking time to digest it and figuring out how that fits into the timeline of what you're doing. The important thing with professional DMing, I think much more so than streaming, which is kind of a rat race now after Critical Role. The important thing is to make people feel important, to make them feel comfortable and like they are the hero of this story that they paid to be a part of. And you can't do that if you don't care about their character as well. If you don't root for them and you don't want to see all the cool things that they can do, the player won't get that feeling ever. And it will be kind of a butting of heads between the world and the player who wants to do cool things and the world that won't allow them to. I think also letting people play at their own pace is a really big deal. Some people are very gung-ho and want to get into everything and touch everything. Some people are more role-play oriented, and some people are still just trying to figure out where they fit in a party dynamic. So having an awareness of who those players are and how they all operate, so you're not calling on someone who maybe doesn't have the energy for it today, or doesn't have, or is dealing with something right now and will jump in as they can. The short answer is be as earnest as possible in your engagement. I think be as earnest and honest as you can. Let people know exactly what's going on from the jump, whether it's streamed or professional. If it's streaming and you're not paying, let people know right away, but let them know sort of what your hopes are in that regard. Or if it's a professional game, make yourself available. Make it possible for players to reach out to you outside of game and go, hey, I was thinking about this. Do you think that we could maybe start implementing this? Or maybe I could start exploring this. Once players feel that they are important to the story, they are exceedingly happy to continue to contribute to it and to add little detail. In my Inevitable game, someone bought a priest costume. They are playing a priest, and another character is getting married to an NPC at some point. So they have written a speech. They have a little priest costume. Exactly. That's the kind of thing that I love, and I don't think I would have gotten that building that up in a streamed game the same way. So making people feel like everything that their character does matters and has weight and has import, even before they get to playing. Letting people know this is a story about you. I'm here to facilitate that, certainly, but I want to do that in a way that, you know, makes you feel like a hero. And I think keeping that in mind has really been what's allowed me to have any success on Start Playing. It's, you know, I'm not running 27 games a week or anything, but I'm content with the groups that I have and with the sort of repetition of that and getting to build that relationship a little bit more every week.
It's so interesting. I've learned so much just from us chatting, because I think you've made me realize that actually there's a big element of people management's the wrong word, but that whole, how can you do as much as possible for the people that are actually there to facilitate and make it amazing for them. And yeah, I think you've just given me so many different things to go away and think about now about how I do things. That's great. This is a perfect episode for me.
Glad.
Oh, amazing. So, final question, and it's the question I ask everybody because it's the subject I'm fascinated, especially in current times. How do you deal with social media, as in interacting and how it kind of responds?
I don't love social media, but I am good at it, if that makes sense.
Yep.
My older sister did social media as a career for 4 or 5 years, and so I've kind of learned some things kind of trickling down from her.
Brilliant.
I don't love social media because there is a lot of tendency for people to just comment unnecessarily or fight or say things that aren't helpful or true.
Yeah.
But it is very necessary, both on a professional and a channel level. I maintain my own personal existence. My one account that is separate from all of the projects that I'm doing, that's just me, where I can throw up whatever I want. I make teas, I do a bunch of weird stuff, and that all goes under sort of that partition. But it also allows me to build a personal rapport with people on social media. It's not a channel that's responding to people. It's me, or it's my partner, or it's our stage manager who are responding to people with their actual handles. And, you know, we're visible.
Yeah.
We're faces that people can see and names that people can get to know. But I also do spend a lot of time on our social media. We only have a Twitter because I'm one human being and I will probably explode if I try to manage anything else. But our Twitter is very active. It's got its own kind of brand voice, so that even if we're announcing a cancellation or something has changed, it's still kind of like, hi there, face here. And we can kind of maintain sort of that veneer of, I'm back here, I'm the man behind the curtain, and I totally know what's going on. I've got everything taken care of. Please don't look behind the curtain. Again, I think it is just that idea of earnestness and honestness. A lot of the time on social media, you get the feeling that people are like reaching for clout, or are maybe over exaggerating their own accomplishments, or their own troubles. And I think finding kind of a happy middle ground of a voice that is a little silly, but also still an authoritative figure, and still, you know, this is what's happening, this is what our programming is, please show up here. You know, finding a balance between fun and having it together is very difficult, I think, in any regard, but especially in this one. I have chosen to have fun with our social media. I have chosen to kind of make the Exquisite Corpse Presents voice very distinct, make it something that if you see a tweet from us, you know it's from us, whether it's good or bad news. And it also sounds different from me. The voice does not sound like Abadonne speaking. It sounds more like sort of a, again, kind of like a face from early Nickelodeon. And I think that's sort of how I've been getting by. I don't leave comments on things if I don't actually have anything to say. Especially if it's somebody who's fairly popular in this scene. I try not to clog up their inboxes or their notifications. If I have like an actual comment that I think has merit, then I will leave it, get in and out, and go. Just leave. And sort of let them digest with that. Don't linger so long that I make a mistake or say something weird. It's just kind of knowing when you are welcome to speak and when you are not on social media. And some posts are not for you. Some conversations are not for you to enter.
100%.
So I think... yeah, I think just having that awareness, like even if it's just spending some time on social media, looking at different accounts and seeing kind of what they've got going on, having that awareness of like, things could go very south for me on social media very quickly if I am not apprised of everything that's going on and who I'm communicating with. It's just research. It's just sort of knowing not just your audience, but who your contemporaries in the field are. And being able to kind of look at them from across the water and be like, hey, I see you, maybe we'll do something together later.
No, absolutely. It's, I know we need it, but it's just such a minefield sometimes. And the amount of times I've typed something and gone, okay, step back. I actually don't
Yep.
need to say anything. I don't need to just know I'm not going to add any value. I'm just going to delete that and I'm just going to walk away because
Yes.
there's nothing to be gained from this. And then other times I've typed it and posted it. It really is, yeah.
Yeah.
Other times I've gone,
Why did I do that? Oh, now I'm here. Now
Yep.
my notifications
Like,
are this for the rest of the day.
ooh,
Excellent.
Okay, I've suddenly upset everybody. Great. Not intentionally, but it does
Cool,
happen.
cool.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you so much for coming on today. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I'm sure anybody watching would have taken away quite a chunk of of wisdom from us chatting today. So I really, really do appreciate it. Thank you so much. Do you want to just?
Thank you so much for having me.
No, it's my pleasure. This is why I've done this, so I can get to talk to people like you who are incredible talents and really add value to the industry. So no, thank you. It's my pleasure to have you on. Seriously. Do you want to just do an outro and just tell everybody what you got going on, where they can find you?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me again. I'm going to keep saying it because I never get to talk about this kind of nitty-gritty stuff, and that's really wonderful for me. You can find me at Atrocity Kitsch on Twitter or at the Exquisite Corpse with a 0 instead of an O on Instagram because it was taken. But more importantly, you can find me on Exquisite Corpse Presents. We will be streaming all weekend long, pretty much every weekend. We've got a little bit of something for everybody. We've got some sci-fi, we've got some cyberpunk, we've got some high fantasy, we've got superheroes. We're going to have Lord of the Rings soon. It's a great time. Saturday? Nope, not Saturday. I have too many things in my head as it is. Friday at 6 p.m. PST is the premiere of Metalloteens in the City of Tomorrow. Saturday, a bunch of other stuff is happening on the channel. And Sunday, a bunch of other stuff is happening on the channel. So please go to at Exquisite TTRPG for all of the updates there, because Lord knows I don't remember them.
Brilliant. Thank you once again. Thank you so much. Greatly appreciated. And that's all we got time for.
It's been a pleasure.
Lovely people. Don't forget you can like and subscribe. You can follow me across the social media under the Gamers Rest, and you can check out all the different things we've got going on the channel. So at the moment, Thursdays we are live streaming The Quiet Year, and we've got like one episode left to go this week, I believe, which I've got to prep for this evening. And then there'll be something else. You'll have to stay tuned and see. But make sure you take care of yourselves, and of course those that can't, and do come back again, where once more I'll be talking to people on Tal Talks. Thanks everyone. Take care. We'll see you soon. Bye.